So in this episode, I want to expose the 5 biggest lies that almost everyone normalizes. And once you recognize them, it's going to be harder and harder for you to believe these lies ever again. What if I told you that the reason you're not as far along as you would like to be in life has nothing to do with talent, luck, or even resources, but instead it comes down to just a handful of lies that you've been quietly telling yourself? Now, here's the catch. These lies feel so reasonable, so logical that you probably wouldn't even think to question them. In other words, they sound like the truth. And for people who are operating mostly from that ground level perspective, that's exactly how they function. These are truths to live by, to make decisions by, to suffer the consequences by. But as spiritually mature people, we want to be better at seeing these lies for what they truly are. Because when you zoom out to that higher 30,000 foot perspective, you realize that these are not truths at all. These are delay tactics. They're clever little stories that we use to buy ourselves time, to avoid discomfort, and to keep us from showing up fully to our unique path and purpose. And I know these lies intimately because I've told them to myself plenty of times. I've used each one of them to justify putting things off and to convince myself that I was being practical and to soften the sting of not following through. And for a while, I believed them. But here's the thing. The more we repeat these stories, the more quietly they drain our potential. And the next thing you know, we look up and we don't feel like we're on our path or purpose at all, because those lies have kept us stuck at the ground level view of life where everything feels limited and black and white. And we're in this competition with everybody else and it's either good or it's bad. When what we really want is we want to operate more from that spiritual perspective where we can see the bigger patterns and where our true path starts to come into greater and greater focus. So in this episode, I want to expose the 5 biggest lies that almost everyone normalizes. And once you recognize them, it's going to be harder and harder for you to believe these lies ever again. By the way, if you're new to this channel, my name is Watkins. I started The Spiritual Perspective to have a platform to discuss everyday topics and concerns from that 30,000 foot view, which is the broader perspective that allows us to see themes and patterns that will help us navigate life from a place of more fulfillment, as opposed to the ground level view where things are more linear and black or white, and it keeps us stuck in judgment and frustration and misery. And regarding the 5 biggest lies, if we are not where we want to be in life right now, generally it's because we have bought into one or all of these lies. And I'm using that word intentionally because, as we'll demonstrate, each one of these statements sounds like it could be true. It sounds like it's factual. But when you peel back the layers, it's subjective, meaning it's not true for everybody. It's situational. And these are stories that we tend to pull out whenever we want to excuse ourselves from doing the things that we need to do in order to create the kind of life that we say we've always wanted to have. So we're going to break down each of these 5 lies so that you can familiarize yourself with them and hopefully see through them and eventually move past them. Okay, so the 5 biggest lies that keep us from accessing our potential. Number 1, this is probably the most common of the 5 lies, and that is, I am too busy. I am so busy. We've all said that. Maybe you said it in the last hour. And this is the lie that we typically tell, thinking that our busyness is somehow unique among humans. And the problem with using the busy excuse as a story that keeps us from accessing our potential is that it causes us to look around and find evidence to support the busyness. So we look around and what do we see? Oh, there's not enough time. There's too much traffic. In other words, it trains us to live in a scarcity mindset as opposed to an abundance mindset. And if we allow ourselves to choose that more abundant mindset, then the story evolves from I don't have time to, okay, I don't have as much time as I want, but how can I use the time that I have more creatively? And then that causes us to look for ways to fit in a 30-second or a 1-minute action step here and there that's going to help to propel us forward just a little bit. And then we start benefiting from the compounding effect of doing little baby steps, little action steps on a regular basis. And that's really what it takes to break out of the mediocrity of not feeling like we're living a path of purpose and to move closer in the direction of what truly feels like our path and purpose and mission. The next lie that we often tell ourselves is, I'm not ready. In other words, we imagine that the resources that we're going to need, or the time that we're going to need, or the support that we think we're going to need is not available to us. And therefore, we have to wait around for it to manifest. Again, this is scarcity mindset, scarcity thinking, and it causes us to focus on what we don't have as opposed to appreciating whatever we do have, whatever resources, whatever time, whatever support we do have. Because the reality is that throughout history, we can find plenty of examples where people did a lot more with a lot less than what we have available to us right now. And what it really takes to get the momentum going is being willing to do the most that we can with whatever we have right now. And just reminding ourselves of that means that it doesn't have to look a certain way. It doesn't have to be perfect. Literally any step in the direction that we say we want to go in is a good step, right? That's our attitude. So change I'm not ready to I'm going to do what I can with what I have in this moment. The third lie that we've all used before, especially when it comes to things like working out or flossing our teeth or other habits that help us maintain good health financially and relationally and even physically and mentally and otherwise, is I'll do it when I'm in the mood. And the reason why this is a lie is because we've all said that. And then when we're in the mood, what happens? We still don't do it. So using that as an excuse is not a surefire way to make sure that we are indeed going to execute on whatever the habit is. Instead, we want to be more honest with ourselves, and we want to openly admit that we're rarely going to be in the mood to work out, to floss, to take care of our health, to count our macros. And so if we can condition ourselves to do even half of what we originally planned to do when we're not in the mood, then you make your resolve more and more bulletproof. Now, what does this look like in real life? If you say that you're going to go to the gym and then 2 hours later, you don't feel like going to the gym and you convince yourself, oh, I'm just not in the mood to go to the gym. What you really mean is that I'm not in the mood to go and walk on a treadmill for 30 minutes and then lift weights for 30 minutes and then do an exercise for 30 minutes. So instead of doing all that, I want you to just drive to the gym and just agree that you're going to drive to the gym. You're going to walk through the front door, and you can even give yourself permission to turn around and come right back home. Now, probably what's going to happen is you're going to walk through that front door and you're going to get on the treadmill, or you're going to go and lift a few weights. In other words, there's a much better chance that you're going to walk in and do something if you agree to just drive to the gym. So you've cut the commitment down in half. You've reduced the friction by just reimagining what you were going to do once you arrived at the gym. And you could do the same thing with flossing your teeth. Maybe you just decide you're going to floss the top row of your teeth. Now, obviously, if you're there in front of the mirror flossing your top row of teeth, you're probably going to go ahead and do the bottom row as well. But you take the pressure off to do the whole thing just by cutting the commitment in half. So whatever the thing is that you're not in the mood to do, cut it in half and start conditioning yourself to do just half of the thing that you say you're not in the mood to do. And then just see what happens with the other half. 5 signs that your meditation practice is too complicated. Number 1, you rarely feel like doing it. Number 2, when you do sit to meditate, your mind feels like a fire hose full of random thoughts. Number 3, you're focusing on your breath or on something else. Number 4, your body gets antsy and you just want to lie down. And last but not least, you can't wait for the time to end and you feel relieved when it does. If any of these sound familiar, you're working way too hard in meditation. And here's the truth, most people are. But the good news is that the fix is embarrassingly simple, but you won't find it in a book or in an online course, not even my own. That's because learning how to master meditation is a lot like learning how to ride a bike or how to swim. Those activities are extremely simple to do, but impossible to learn without somebody teaching you the principles and then providing you with real-time feedback. And meditation is no different. That's why in the age of AI, I still teach live in-person meditation trainings. And if you're ready to master meditation, you're invited to Mexico City this fall to learn how to meditate with ease, the way meditation was always meant to be learned. Just go to mexico.beginmeditating.com or click the QR code to get all of the information about the early registration discount. And I hope to see you in Mexico City very soon. The next lie that we tend to tell ourselves is, I work better under pressure. Who said that before? Everybody. Now, the reason why this is a lie is because better is subjective. And the real question is, have you properly experimented with doing the exact work from a place of being relaxed versus doing that work from a place of being under pressure? Chances are you've only ever worked under pressure, because if you're saying stuff like that, that means that you have a tendency to procrastinate. And so using the pressure excuse to not do the work that you have to do is really just a delay tactic. What you're actually saying is that this work that I say that I have to do is not really a priority for me. These other things like playing video games and scrolling through TikTok and catching up on my Netflix show, those are more of a priority for me than doing the thing that I've been saying I wanted to do. And so once you get honest with yourself about that, what I want you to do is I want you to attach a bigger why onto that project that you've been postponing and trying to convince yourself that you work better under pressure and all this nonsense. How does that project serve your mission? How does it move you closer to financial freedom or to making you a better partner in your relationship? How does it help you to have a stronger mental health? And so if you answer all of those questions and tie it to the behavior, then that behavior or habit will start to rise up in your priority list, and it will start to get the level of attention from you that it deserves. And the way you know that's happening is you stop grappling with that lie that you do better work under pressure, and instead you find yourself making time for it before the deadline. And then finally, the last lie that we tell ourselves is, it's just not the right time. Now, granted, sometimes it's true that maybe having a certain conversation, it's not the right time to do that, or engaging in a certain activity, it's not the right time to do that. But again, we're talking about things that make you come alive. We're talking about things that make you feel expansive, right? Things that are a part of your path and purpose. And so when it comes to those kinds of activities, if we try to convince ourselves that, oh, it's just not the right time yet, usually that is a symptom of imposter syndrome, which, surprise, surprise, everybody has, especially if you're doing something that is aligned with your path and purpose. That is a symptom that we don't yet want to put ourselves out there because maybe we're going to be embarrassed, or maybe we're overly concerned about what other people think, or maybe we have a lot of insecurity around the quality of our work. Whatever the case is, here's what you want to understand. There are certain things that you think you may need. Could be resources, connections, maybe more knowledge, whatever you think you need in order to launch your service or your mission out into the world is not going to come to you until you launch. It's one thing to prepare yourself enough to launch, but once you launch, you're going to get a whole new appreciation and understanding of the thing that you're putting out into the world, because people are either using it or maybe they're not using it. And you're going to get real-time feedback that's going to inform you on how to continue evolving this project. And this is feedback that you would not have gotten had you not put the thing out into the world. So instead of telling yourself it's not the right time, I would strongly suggest not delaying any longer, especially once you have enough of a minimum viable product, an MVP, to launch with. And just know that that's enough. It doesn't have to be pretty. In fact, there's a tech guru, I can't remember who it was, but he said, if your first iteration is not a little bit embarrassing, then you waited too long. So if you feel a little embarrassed putting your thing out into the world, that's actually a good sign that you're launching at the perfect time. Okay, so these are the 5 biggest lies. I'm too busy. I'm not ready. I'll do it when I'm in the mood. I work better under pressure, and it's not the right time. And I guarantee we've all told ourselves some, if not all of those lies in the recent days or weeks or months, I'll be honest with you, I still catch myself telling these kind of lies from time to time. The difference now, though, is that I don't take them seriously. So when I hear myself thinking them or saying them, I just try to remind myself, this is a story. You're BSing yourself. This is not the truth. And then I put my focus on finding a way to take even the smallest step forward, cutting the commitment in half or whatever you have to do. So I highly recommend trying that. And if you want additional accountability, I have an online community called the Happiness Insiders, which will give you access to all kinds of personal growth challenges as well as community support. And I have a book that just came out called The Year You Transform, which gives you a roadmap to change and 10 bulletproof mindsets for staying focused on what's truly important when it comes to your path and purpose, and how to break even the most intimidating challenge down into baby steps and making sure that you're asking yourself the strongest possible questions. You can find a link to that in the description. Otherwise, thank you so much for supporting the channel. Make sure you like and subscribe and comment. It really does help in pushing the channel up in the algorithm and allowing other people to discover these videos. And if you enjoyed this episode, you'll also want to check out my episode on how to accelerate your spiritual growth, and I have another episode on the easy life lie. And I look forward to seeing you in the next Spiritual Perspective episode.